Good morning, everyone. Laura here with your weekly transmission. You'll have to pardon the bedhead and pajamas. I got up at 5 for some Kundalini, trying to get all this done before we have to homeschool the kiddos today. But I wanted to come on because a very important transmission came in. In fact, my guides wanted me to record this yesterday, and I very adamantly was like, I have a work boundary today and I've exceeded it. Something I'm trying to put into place, which very much pertains to the message of the week, which is the theme, I guess you would say, is surrender. And that is a word that I know right now for so many of us is an unfathomable experience. It's not even one we can really conceptualize because so many of us are going through difficult situations, having, to think, hopefully, if we're lucky, we get to work from home, but we're doing it while having to potentially homeschool our kids. If we're not as lucky, then we're worried about how we're going to homeschool our kids, pay our bills, our rent, our mortgage, the stress, the anxiety. It is quite overwhelming, especially as we are seeing things being cut from stimulus packages. We are seeing, that not necessarily the right people are going to receive the right type of assistance that they need right now from their government, from their state. And so consequently, there's this clenching that's going on. And what happens when we're in that position is we had this tendency as humans to think, well, I've got to get up and do something. I've got to figure out a way out of this. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. I've got to try this. I've got to try that. We get very, very much into the primitive brain, that monkey brain that just starts spinning round and round and going all over the place. And the message of surrender, it couldn't be more important right now because there are things that we cannot control. There are things that are completely 100% beyond our control. Are there things that we can control? Sure. Should we take action on those? Sure. But by and large, right now, this week, what we all need most is to enter into a state of surrender where we understand that there may not be an immediate solution or answer to what we're going through. And our nervous systems, they need a break. They need some time to recalibrate. So much is changing. So much vitriol and aggression and anger and worry and anxiety it's everywhere. You see it in people's faces when you cross, if you happen to go outside. I've been such a hermit lately, just because now that the kids are in school 2 days a week, but thankfully we have that. The exposure risk is so much higher, so I don't want to add to that. So groceries are delivered, just let everything is delivered. But when you do, when you do see individuals, whether on TV, whether, through the hiccups, the sessions, what you're seeing is the anxiety, the worry that is on their faces. You can see the tension and feel the tension coming off their bodies. You can feel it in the air. And so much of what is happening right now is part of that great shift. And it is happening within the global scale, and it's happening within the human. And what we are seeing happening is that so many more of us are becoming very, very sensitive to the energies that are around them. They may not know why one moment they are happy and optimistic and feel fine. And then the next, they're anxious, they're angry or worried. But that's the sensitivity and the broadcast they're picking up on the broadcast of the collective. Because again, we are each connected. We are each one. We are all, if one person is suffering, then there is a ripple effect that follows through the entire collective. And right now, there are so many, some 10 million people out of jobs right now. And with unemployment benefits being extended but yet cut, with notions of an actual stimulus, which a one-time stimulus is probably just kind of a cosmic joke for many of us. But with all of that information coming down, and then the political ads and internal pressures of working hopefully and taking care of kids and their schooling and trying to find a job if we're not working, and realizing that the job market is just flooded with so many people who are also in the same position, looking for a way, any way, to put food on their tables. We have to understand that in order for us to be productive in finding a solution and helping, our kiddos, if we have them, with their schooling or what have you, with helping ourselves, just dealing with this complete turnaround of what the norm is, we have to be able to occasionally give ourselves a bit of respite. We need to surrender. We need to surrender to what is. And it was such a clear transmission when I tapped in yesterday to try to figure out what the collective message was going to be for this week. And the very first word that came through was surrender. If we're not in a state of surrender, we're in a state of contraction and we're in a state of clenching, which means energy cannot flow in or out. And that is a breakup. It is an obstruction to the universal flow of energy. And whether that energy is emotion, whether it is the energy of new opportunities, new timelines, however you want to see it, there has to be that inward outward flow. That is the natural order of energy. It has to be able to move in order for us to be able to, one, bodily receive what we need energetically, but also for us to have the resources energetically to do anything that we have on our plate. And for many of us right now, our plates are overflowing. So again, I know that suggesting that this is a week of surrender is not necessarily, I'm sure there's many eyes that were rolling as mine were when I got the message. And they used even me as an example. They used, the situations that I'm in and, paying for my eldest son's bills, his rent, his utilities, everything, because of his situation and what he's going through. And they were like, look at even yourself, like you're fine, like financially your family's not in a hardship, but you guys, have the pressures of having kids at home and trying to school them as well 3 days a week, but you still have those 2-day breaks, and you're working double time, you're doing this, you're creating that. They're like, look at even yourself. Now imagine, they were saying, if you were one of those who were really in a position of hardship, and they were like, your own nervous system has been quite clenched and quite high octane, it's been on a higher octave because of all that, all the many puzzle pieces that we're trying to keep together. But we predominantly don't have it nearly as bad as many of the people in the rest of this world do. And then it hit me, oh yeah, surrender is not sort of a denial of what's going on. It's not a passivity in the sense of, well, I can't do anything about it, so I'm just going to eat chips on the couch and watch TV for the, remainder of, this going on. It was more of just saying, like, we are allowed to take periods of rest. We are allowed and are meant to take moments of respite. We need to in order to replenish ourselves so that we can then come out of that place of surrender with fresh energy, with fresh perspective, and with the capacity to do what we have to do to take whatever actions we need to take. But for many of us, those actions are few and far between, which makes the need to surrender to what is, instead of frenetically going down the list of, what isn't in place, what is missing. It's easy to go down that rabbit hole. It is not so easy to be in a position of saying, you know what, I have to surrender to what is. I have to surrender to what is, because if I drive myself into the ground thinking that I can control this, that I can change this, I could well do so to my detriment. I could do so to the detriment of the people who depend on me, who are surrounded by me. And that's the very antithesis of what all of this is about. This isn't, and I know a lot of people don't like this interpretation, but what this particular time in our country and in the global history is teaching us is that certain things have to change. We may not like the way that change comes. We may wish it had come a different way. But instead of being, why is this happening? How could this happen? Part of surrendering is being in this position of saying, what's going on right now? That's the place where we begin to open up to the infinite possibilities that are still available to us, especially as energetically things begin to shift. And whether you are on that train of thought or not, whether you realize that, some of the mood swings are related to you, becoming more sensitive and kind of coming online or not, is irrelevant. What matters is that we begin to ask ourselves different questions to the situations we're in, which is why surrendering to what is right now, without judgment, without characterization, without polarization, without going into, judgment and, comparison to other people's experiences, is so incredibly important. That 0 point of neutrality that we've talked about, or I've talked about many, many times, that's where, when we're in surrender and we can ask ourselves, instead of how or why, we can say what's going on. That is a perspective that begins to allow ourselves to expand into the infinite possibilities that are available to us at all times. And, as much as that may seem like, well, how can we say that when families are out of work and they don't know how they're going to feed their kids? And there's no doubting that that's happening. But there's also no doubting that in a lot of ways, there's nothing that can be done about that right now. There's nothing that, my kid was trying to get a job just at a fast food joint. And he used to be able to do this in our town like that, when he was first starting out and going to school, and it was no problem. Now, not so much. Why? Because the job market is flooded with people who are willing to take anything to supplement the income that they lost. But when we ask ourselves, what's going on here? We begin to expand, and we begin, in just that question alone, to opening up to the infinite possibilities of how our situation could be better, that we really can't access, that we really cannot conceive of in the current way of thinking that has been the 3D programming and has been the linear, A, B, C, two follows one, three follows two type of thinking. This kind of black or white, is or isn't, good or bad. We can't even open to those notions of possibility and the infinite possibility until we begin changing the questions that we're asking, and until we stop with the contraction and clenching that comes when we try to control the situation. And that comes when we don't give ourselves the opportunity to surrender to what is and ask, what is going on here? What is going on here? I lost my keys the other day, and instead of going, my girls must have taken them and played with them, or, my husband must have used them to move my car and didn't put them back where they go. I just asked myself, what's going on here? What's happening, and sure enough, I found my keys where they normally are when I went back to go look for them. Because chances are the mindset I was in when I went to go look for those keys and I found them to be missing, I was on a completely different frequency or dimension, if you want to call it, than when I put my keys there. So the questions we ask, the amount of contraction or clenching that we're doing right now is quite literally what is stopping us from being able to access the limitless possibilities that we can get things back in order. It's not going to stop, the things that are happening right away. It's not going to change the fact that things are changing, whether we want them to or not. It is inevitable, and it's happening right before our very eyes, and it's unprecedented, and yes, it's scary. But we have a choice as sovereign beings how much what is going on around us is allowed to affect what is going on within us. And that's where the notion of surrender is so incredibly important. Because when you surrender, you accept that, okay, this is what's going on. I may not be able to do anything about what is happening right now, but I can, be more present helping my kids with their schoolwork. I can be more present by calling my family members who maybe live alone, who are elderly, and who aren't leaving their homes. I can use this opportunity to work on myself a little bit so that maybe I can get into a place where I'm not so polarized or so clenched or contracted or in a place of judgment or in that primitive brain of, that reptilian brain of, I gotta do something. There may not be anything right now for you to do with that type of thinking. And for many of you, you're seeing that firsthand. The only option that is left for you is to move into a place of surrender. And not only does it, open up, changing the way you perceive things, asking different questions, instead of how and why, what's going on, it changes how you feel. Because your nervous system, all of our nervous systems, need a break. They need a break. They need a moment of quietude. They need a moment of calmness where we're not putting all that stress, all that worry upon ourselves. And instead, we're accepting the situation as it is. We're surrendering the best that we can. And we're moving into a position of asking different questions Because when we do that, again, we open ourselves up to the infinite possibilities. We unclench and we allow, again, that natural flow of energy to flow in and flow out. And we give ourselves the necessary peace, the necessary calm amongst the storm that so many people need. And you have that option. You as a sovereign being have that option. You can either clench and contract and go into that reptilian brain and pack one pressure on top of one pressure on top of another pressure. You can try to control the situation. You can drive yourself mad going through the ads. You can sell yourself in 1,000 different ways, or you can choose to surrender, and you can pivot to trying to give your nervous system a rest, to doing a little bit of work on yourself, to being more present with those that you want to be present with, that you need to be present with. And you can begin asking different questions and getting rid of the judgments, the characterizations, the polarizations, the identifications that we as humans like to put on every single situation we face. And whether you choose one or the other is ultimately up to you. Nobody can force you into one space or the other. But you have to ask yourself, as is the question we should all be asking ourselves as we try to elevate our own frequency and vibrancy and radiance, is this moving me closer to how I want to feel, or is it taking me further from it? And if it's taking you further from it, that's probably a good indication that it's not something you should be doing. But you have to be willing to make that conscious choice. But this is a week for surrender. It's a week for relaxation. It is a week for not just doing what you have to do, but doing what you want to do. It's a week for taking naps if you need. So many people are experiencing ascension symptoms like being tired all the time, no matter how much sleep they've gotten, feeling like they're out of time, feeling like they're dizzy, feeling like they're operating from two different spaces. And it's because you are. So it's very, very important this week. And what surrender in this context really means is listen to what you're feeling. Pay attention to your body. If what you're doing does not feel good, then chances are you should not be doing it. You should be doing something else and moving into a space where you're going, what right now would make me feel better? I may not be able to provide myself with that job that covers all of my bills or change what my government is doing in response to what's going on, but there are things in my immediate environment and within myself that I can do to make myself feel better. And then we move in that space. That's the antidote, one way or the other. Those are the choices that we have. And so we have to make that conscious decision this week, which path we're going to take. And again, it doesn't mean that, next week isn't going to be different and it's not going to be time to kind of get back into action. But this is not the week for it. This is the week for sitting with what is and allowing yourself to pay attention to the judgments that you place on yourself and the situation. This is the time where you begin to really pay attention to the things that you're telling yourself, the things that you're saying, the way you're labeling, the way you're polarizing your own experience. Because if you're doing that, you're still in contraction. You're still in that 3D programming. And the limitless possibilities that are available to each and every single one of us are not going to be able to get through to you. They're going to be blocked. So whatever path that you take this week, I hope you take it with the utmost consciousness, and I hope you take it with the utmost loving intention. I hope you pay attention to your heart and let it direct you. I hope you pay attention to your body and what it's feeling. And most of all, I really sincerely hope that you give yourself the opportunity to think, can I think about this differently? Can I ask different questions? Can I move out of polarization, out of judgment, and just be. Because as much as it may seem inaccessible, it is precisely what your nervous system and what your energetic and what your physical body needs right now. So I wish you all a wonderful week. I hope this transmission is received with love. I hope that you know that you're loved. I hope you know that you are supported, even if you feel like you're not. And I hope that you go through this week with ease, with grace, and with surrender.